All right, yes. So a forecast with a face cam. What's going on? I just quickly wanted to go over a few things right here, and I wanted to go over an announcement. Now, the announcement I will actually link uh, below or above this video. You can click on it, and you will be taken to the exact announcement as well. I don't want to waste a lot of your time here because I know some people are also just looking forward to the forecast and not necessarily this talk. So if you want to check that out, then please click on that and or just view it. I'm not sure how I'll go about it, but you'll see it. You'll see it next to this video, and then read that. It's a very happy with the announcement. So that is what I've been very busy with this past week. I have been extremely busy from morning, and that's why the forecasts have been this late, because for me it is the exact time you're seeing right there. It is past midnight, which is not ideal because I've been waking up and going to bed late, but it's all going to be worth it, and you'll see it in the announcement. All right, without further ado, let's dive straight into the forecast. Now, let's start off with the dollar, and if we take a look at the dollar, then we are seeing currently, which I find that quite interesting, because we are coming off this daily Verweij gap, and I mentioned yesterday I would ideally want to see this high get reached right there to continue higher off of that. And the reason being is because we already had quite a big retracement, and currently we can see that we don't really have a new expansion phase sitting right there. As in, this candle just clearly struggled to actually continue higher. So the only option that we have right now is for this next candle to continue higher. If it does not want to do that, then we have a target in the form of this low, but then we also have a target in the form of this overlapping high right there. And it is a Friday, so keep that in mind as well, that I am not too convinced on price already continuing higher right there. I'm not too convinced at all. But if we do want to do that, that could be nice. And if we do not continue higher off that, then the next place that we can continue higher off of, again, like mentioned yesterday as well, is the overlapping high. And the overlapping part is ideally where I would like to get involved as well. If we do not respect that, then I would say, all right, we are still looking at overall bearish prices right there. So keep that in mind. Now, with that price action, we have ES and NASDAQ right there continuing higher as well, where ES and NASDAQ both, actually the 1 hour value gaps, told us a quite interesting story where we're looking to continue higher as well, simply based on a flow trading plan. Filtering process trading plan, not necessarily with flow, yes, for sure, looking quite interesting. Now, ES right here is where we can also look to continue higher, and I find this quite interesting because if the dollar continues lower a little bit more and then continues higher, ES could definitely do something like this. The same for NASDAQ, where it could sweep those highs to then continue lower right there. So there's definitely something to keep in mind as well. So if we go over YM right there, this is actually really interesting, and especially if the dollar does want to continue lower, because then we have a very nice setup here on YM to continue higher overall. That's actually quite interesting price action, and I do really like this right here. So NASDAQ, ES, YM currently still bullish until we can get those clearly signs that we do want to be bearish. DAX more so consolidating, where it's not clearly bullish, not clearly bearish, just more so again in that consolidation, which I do not necessarily want to get involved in. And unfortunately, this is a characteristic of DAX, which you can see right there. It's quite similar to Bitcoin actually, where we have huge moves, very nice moves, and then afterwards we just consolidate a lot before we actually have new moves as well, which is just the unfortunate reality on DAX right there. So currently I don't want to do anything here. Now, Australian dollar, US dollar. Here, of course, I think we can still continue lower. I do prefer currently this daily Verweij gap right there to continue lower off of that. I see we also have this daily Verweij gap. If we already continue lower off of that with new Verweij gaps, then I can definitely see us already continue lower, but the daily Verweij gap right there could also be very nice to continue lower off of that. EU. Now, EU has had a quite, well, it's the same, of course, just inversed on the dollar, where we were also, or I was also expecting this overlapping part to get traded into, which did not happen. So here, this rejection is nice, but it should have been a bigger rejection. And what I mean by that is we came lower, which is clearly seen by the wick, right? But then we also have the bottom wick, where that indicates that we also had that bullish displacement again, which is not that nice, which I ideally don't want to see here. So the retracement is quite heavy. It's a quite heavy retracement. So if something like this happens, I would not be surprised actually. So there's definitely something to keep in mind as well. Now on GU we can see we clearly disrespected the fair value gap, which we actually had a quite nice rejection. We did not create fair value gaps lower though, which was of course a great indication that we did not want to continue lower. So here I just simply want to stay out because this is quite consolidating. I'm going to remove or move it to the breakdown list. New Zealand dollar, US dollar. Now this is quite interesting because if here we can catch sort of the last trade 1 hour, 4 hour fair value gaps lower right there to target this low, that could be very interesting on this last Friday as well. US dollar, Canadian dollar, daily fair value gap right there. Can we come into it in alignment with the dollar to then continue higher? Could be nice, but again, we have the weekly resistance to the left, so I'm not super interested in it. US dollar CHF as well, not super interested in it. US dollar JPY, which we mentioned, of course, as well, right here, that we are just simply exploding. We're simply exploding higher. And if we get a good setup right here, and what I mean with a good setup, if we get a clear discount rate that we can continue higher from, then we get a nice confirmation. I would love to take a swing trade here to just target higher, because even if the dollar is consolidating, JPY is just at the moment so much weaker. So this is very interesting to actually look for a longer term trade as well. Silver, like we mentioned yesterday, we now have this daily fair value gap right there. That's quite interesting, which we can continue lower off of ideally. So that could be quite interesting right there. That's definitely looking quite nice. Gold, we had the 4 hour value gap, which we did not respect. And of course, that goes hand in hand with the creation of a daily fair value gap as well, which, same as silver, we can continue lower off of. Could be quite interesting. Bitcoin, finally, there's some life in Bitcoin. Perfect. Now, on the 4 hour, I would like to see lower prices off of this fair value gap right there, targeting the weekly fair value gap. That could be very interesting right there. Could be very nice. Do quite like that. Ideally, even overlapping with these lows. I do not use the wick because, first of all, it's not overlapping. And second of all, the long wick. And long wicks like these, I tend to ignore. Do not really find them interesting. So this is quite interesting, overlapping to continue lower off of that. Would be nice. Crude oil, still consolidating, but we have a potential expansion phase of a daily fair value gap. So, do we trust that daily fair value gap? Definitely not. And the reason being for that is because we've clearly been struggling overall, right? So here, this could come into the daily fair value gap and then just fail again and do something like this. So coming into next week, I want to be careful here. And then after daily fair value gap, if we get new 4 hour fair value gaps, all right, that would give me a little bit more trust. Nifty is currently where we can definitely look to continue lower off of. We're in this bearish ST, which, to show you this more clearly, this is just the way I view those gaps right there. I just view them as fair value gaps. So currently we're in that fair value gap, and right there we can continue lower off of that. So if you get the confirmation, that could actually be quite interesting right there to continue lower. I do quite like that. It's a beautiful ST. It's absolutely picture perfect ST. Quite like that. All right. Let's go over the short list. We went over all of these, and let's actually update the interest list a little bit. I do still like EU, but New Zealand dollar, US dollar is definitely high probability because it's that close to the drawn liquidity. This is definitely heading there. So if you can get involved in a move, then this would be at the top of my interest list because it's just very interesting, as in the drawn liquidity is just super clear. Other than that, these are quite equal right there, I would argue. Where EU, if we get lower prices again, could still be very interesting. But it's just concerning that we had a big retracement right there. Now, Looking at the longs, use JPY, we went over Canadian dollar JPY, which we do have news supporting the ID currently on for this Friday actually. On the daily and the 4 hour, we can clearly see daily no plans of returning before we reach the drawn liquidity, in my opinion. So the 4 hour would be where the interesting things happen. If we get a 4 hour fair value gap, which would be this expansion phase right there, that could be interesting to continue higher off of. Then for the waiting list, Euro, Australian dollar, let's see. Daily fair value gap sitting right there, which we can definitely look to continue higher off of. I'm not too certain on what the economic calendar is telling us for tomorrow. So if we do have news supporting the ID, then this could definitely be interesting. And let's actually see. We have a 1 hour ST currently in the making, 20 minutes away from it. On the 15 minutes, let's see. 15 minutes, we have a setup sitting right there. Let me actually quickly go over the economic calendar. Let me grab it right here. All right, we have Euro news at, if I'm not mistaken, 5 a.m. So this right there is definitely quite interesting. It's definitely quite interesting. I'm going to add it to the long list. If you can even look to follow through on here to look at those higher targets, that is definitely quite interesting. I really like this. Very interesting. Euro JPY, let's see. Already continuing higher right there. And we've overtaken that fair value gap. So it's definitely interesting for longs. Closest target is this daily fair value gap right there. Order block, of course, as well, right there. Which this is probably going to be the high of the week right there, where we're going to stop. But on the 4 hour, it's already expanding. This is quite difficult because right now you would sort of need to chase price in order to get involved, where Euro Australian dollar was still in early phases. Euro New Zealand dollar right there. Already came into the daily value gap. Everything, and of course, these are all Asia pairs as well. So if you were to take an entry right now, that would be perfectly fine. Now, right now is quite difficult because I still need to upload this video, but right here, this is also quite interesting right there and absolutely beautiful. Even took off before you got a proper entry. So that is quite a pity. But overall, quite interesting. I do not want to look for new trades though right here. But on GBP New Zealand dollar, let's see. Same exact thing where it's already taking off right there. 4 hour value gaps could be interesting. Although, if I were to look currently at the situation, I would prefer Euro Australian dollar, and this would be at the top of my interest list right there, because still simply it has the potential to continue higher right there. So that could definitely be quite interesting.